Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. Joe DeFranco. This one's special. Joe and I have been circling each other for a really long time. It's the first time some face-to-face. We always miss each other at events in person. Joe is an iconic fitness educator in the industry, gym owner, the host of the Industrial Strength Show, which is one of the OG podcasts in the space. It's an honor to finally have you as a guest. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I was very excited when I saw your message. We've, like you said, almost crossed paths many times. Just recently, a few months back, we were supposed to both speak at Luca's event. You made it there. I unfortunately had to pull out, had some family stuff with my daughter had a last minute soccer thing come up that we had to travel. So I'm glad we still need to meet in person, but I'm glad we got to do this. Is a good first step.
It'll happen. It's often
Yeah.
how it first starts with, some of my industry friends like a Jordan Syed who I had on recently. We had a number of podcasts, finally got to speak at an event together. So let's dive right in. You definitely have been talking a lot about this. How has your training and lifestyle changed to prioritize longevity? You've been in the game a while. You said you're just about to hit 50.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, this could be the whole podcast. How has my training changed? I guess I'll start by just saying this, and we could kind of take it from here, I guess. But my mindset has shifted now to where I care a lot more about how I feel outside of the gym. The 23 hours that we're not in the gym is way more important to me now as a dad, as an entrepreneur, business owner, as someone that's about to turn 50 and has had multiple back surgeries and shoulder surgeries, and my body has been beat to hell. Unfortunately, I've had some genetic things, some old football injuries. Like, it doesn't matter how or why, but the we're not getting any younger. And I think where I used to go to the gym and it was all about, putting 5 more pounds on the bar, lifting more weight, doing an extra rep. I was just obsessed with my gym performance, which looking back, it's kind of funny. And I wouldn't change it for the world, but now looking at it through the lens of a 49-and-a-half-year-old, I look back at when I was like at my biggest and strongest. I was it was like the most worthless I was outside of the gym because I was always sore and beat up. You train legs and then you can't walk for 5 or 6 days. Your friends look at you as like the jacked, strong meathead guy, but I'm the last guy that you wanted to ask to like help you move some furniture or something because I'd always be complaining something hurt. I did something at the gym. Now I still love training and I love performance-based training, and I like going to the gym, having a reason and a purpose to train. I love having goals and lifting heavier and doing more reps and trying to one up myself. But if it's going to take away from my life, my kids, my family, my job, now I don't do it. Now I'm more about I want everything I do in the gym to make my life outside of the gym better, easier, etc. So that's been like a huge mental shift for me, which, 20, 30-year-old Joe DeFranco would be rolling his eyes right now and calling me a pussy, but that's where we're at right now.
Where's the sweet spot? So you got someone who maybe they're somewhere in between 20-year-old Joe and the dawn of 50-year-old Joe. And we know that, okay, muscle and strength are really, really positively correlated with longevity, quality of life, et cetera. But is there a tipping point past which that you would say to someone, hey, this is the red line. Maybe be careful of this level of intensity, this mindset?
Yeah, so two big rules that I now follow in the gym that when even myself when I'm like I'm on the fence, right? Should I do this, or is this gonna end up causing an injury? Am I gonna regret this later? I have two things now that I didn't always have. Number one, if it hurts, I don't do it. And when I say hurt in a bad way, yeah, you want to train hard. I'm not talking about a muscle burning from, an AMRAP set to failure. I'm talking about like when you roll back and you do your first set of straight bar bench and there's clicking and snapping and crackling and popping in your shoulders that doesn't feel right. It's like bad pain. At this point, with myself and all my clients, it's a hard rule. If it hurts, we don't do it, because rule number two is there are no mandatory exercises anymore. I used to every every upper body session of mine started with a barbell bench press variation. Every lower body session started with a barbell squat or deadlift variation. For decades, that was just kind of the rule, right? Even though I didn't think much about it, but it was just how it was. Now, to your point, it's even more important for us to be strong and maintain muscle for the sport of life. But I know there are thousands of different squat variations. There are thousands of different deadlift and hinge variations. There's thousands of different horizontal pressing variations. It doesn't have to be a straight bar bench. If a weighted push-up doesn't cause that same pain to my shoulders, I'm going to do the weighted push-up or the neutral grip, slight incline dumbbell bench press instead of the straight bar bench. And in the meantime, we're still going to try to figure out, why does that straight bar bench or straight bar squat hurt? Let's try to figure that out. And in our warm-ups and on our off days, let's work on our mobility and the corrective exercises, or whatever the hell you want to call it, if you will. We're going to still work on that stuff. We're not going to just say, oh, this hurts, so don't do it, ignore it, and go do something else. We're going to work on it, but during the course of the workout, when we're pushing ourselves and we're loading the muscle and the movement pattern, it's going to be patterns that don't hurt, because now we know that there are no mandatory exercises.
Have you modified the way that you work out, split structure, number of days, number of hours, and volume across your week? Have you changed that as you've gotten older?
Yes, so the biggest changes for me are the how I work out, kind of along the lines of what we were just saying. Every workout started with a heavy barbell lift. Whether I was always a big upper lower split or full body, working with athletes depending on the time of year it was. But for myself, I gravitated more towards an upper lower split. I still love an upper lower split, but now I do more full body training. But the biggest thing for me, regardless of the split I do, and I change the split every few months, I use now what, I guess, for lack of a better term, I call a reverse workout order, where I do my main lift towards the middle or the end of my workout. So if my main exercise on a lower body day is going to be a heavy goblet squat, I'm not going to do it first. I'm going to do a good warm up, 5-10 minute thorough dynamic warm up, do my mobility, and then my first 2 or 3 exercises, I might start with supersetting a leg curl variation and some TKEs to get blood flowing in the hamstrings and the quads. Then I might do a unilateral exercise like a Bulgarian split squat, where I'm getting the mobility and the strength, working one limb at a time. Now I'm good and sweaty. I got a pump going in my legs. Now I'm going to do whatever that heavy lift is for the day. Same thing with upper body. I'm not starting with the heavy bench variation anymore. It's a bunch of upper back work, some shoulder work. I might even do arms, some isolation arm work first, get a pump around the elbows, pump up the biceps, triceps, and then do my heavy press. That has made a world of difference in how my joints feel and my overall health. That's really kind of it doesn't put as much mileage on your body, so to speak, when you train that way. It's a little hit to your ego in the beginning because you might not be able to lift as heavy. But the cool thing is our body is very our body adapts to anything and everything we do, right? It's an incredible adaptive organism, which is very cool when now I'm handling the same weights at the end of my workout that I used to handle at the beginning of my workout. So now that's a win-win for me. It's safer, it feels better, and I'm actually stronger in a fatigued state than I used to be.
There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, and people don't even understand. Like, you get a pump, you're a little structurally bigger. That's a little bit more physical structure to bear load, right? You sure it's not muscle, it's fluid in the muscle, but structurally speaking, you can tolerate a little bit more. You're extending your warm up. Joints should be feeling good by this point, and at least initially, and you alluded to this, if you are slightly more fatigued, you've done more stuff, it's actually a bit of a governor on the pure load. So initially, you're using less load, but probably to the same amount to near failure. So the training stimulus should still be progressive. And over time, you adapt to it, like you said.
Absolutely. And that's a huge one. And that I love the I'm glad you brought that up because that's a big thing that I really try to get across to my clients now, which is funny. A lot of my clients now, a lot of them still have that old school mentality. We're slowly getting it out of them because my my clientele now, which is more what would be referred to as general pop, 35, 40 plus year old clients, these are all people that I trained when they were high school, college, professional athletes. So they trained old school DeFranco style and they have that meathead kind of mentality. So a big thing for them is still, it's just engraved in their brain. The way that you progress is to lift heavier weight. And yes, that is certainly one way to progress, and it's awesome. But it is not the only way to progress an exercise. We could, to your point, I could use the same weight, but do it at the end of my workout when maybe I'm a little bit more fatigued. That's progress. I could do the same exercise in the same weight, but my technique improved. That's progress. I could I could take a little bit less rest if I could handle the same weight with a few seconds less rest between each set. That's progress. You know, there's so many different ways to make progress. I love increasing the range of motion as progress. If you're doing a Bulgarian split squat and you're going heavier and heavier, and we want to be a little bit conservative. If we're starting to get really strong and handling heavy weights, that's great. But one thing I'll do is I'll elevate their front foot, even if it's just on a 10-pound plate. Now use that same weight, but we have a half of an inch, 3/4 of an inch lower you have to get on each rep. If you do that with the same weight, that's progress. So all different ways of making progress without just always having to load the body and the joints with more weight.
I just posted, so obviously it'll be a couple of weeks later with the release of this, but a video of some of my lower body training. And I've been doing a lot of deficit reverse lunges. So dumbbell,
Love
front
them.
foot elevated, and you get more range of motion because for most people I found, if you're just doing a lunge, a reverse lunge, you're running out of room at your knee at the ground, not your end range of motion at your hip. Especially if you could squat below parallel, then all of a sudden you do this lunge position and you're artificially restricted. So as opposed to just loading it more, and it's the same principle as elevating your front foot on a Bulgarian. Usually you run out of room at the floor. So something like that, it becomes a governor of the load. And I love how it feels. And I feel a little bit less beaten up when I do it.
Me too. I let you get that killing two birds with one stone. If we could build, or three, build strength, muscle, and mobility at once, now you have one hell of an exercise, especially for that 35, 40-year-old plus crowd.
So how do you, I mean, you've evolved. How do you get, is it just like lead by example? How do you get your clients who've grown up with you, the old meatheads, and especially maybe like you got a Paul Levesque, and I'm sure that, so for anybody who doesn't recognize Paul Levesque, I mean, I'm going to tease him. First of all, he was amazing in an underrated movie, which is Blade 3. Like
I
people shit
agree.
on
I
Blade
agree.
3. I love Blade 3, right? Yes, it's before Ryan Reynolds became super, popular, famous. But Paul Levesque's actually better known as Triple H. He's the iconic, pro wrestler, and you've been working with him for years. So, I mean, those guys are made of something different altogether. So, how do you get through to him, or does he kind of keep you going? Look at, oh man, look at this guy beating up his body, putting on the line all the time. I could handle more. So anything there.
Yeah, well, he's a great example too, where he's not. It's not as difficult with him because he hired me originally 14 and a half years ago because he was getting injured more and
Mm.
more. He knew he had to do something different because he's a huge bodybuilding fan. He's actually very knowledgeable with the sport of bodybuilding. And he used to do stuff at the Mr. Olympia and the Arnold, and very big fan of the sport of bodybuilding. And that's how he trained forever, more for the look of the wrestling business. And he got away with it, looked phenomenal, and was one of the best to ever do it. But as he got a little bit later in his career, he started having injury after injury, surgery after surgery, and knew he had to change the way he trained. So his initial call to me was actually, and there's a cool lesson here. He said, "Listen, I I need to train more like an athlete. I need to train more for function. That is not the style of training that I grew up doing. So I want to hire an expert in that area. Your name kept coming up, and that's why he originally called me. And the original conversation was, he said, "Listen, I realize I'm probably not going to be able to look the way I want to look, but I'm happy to trade that off. I'll trade off what I look like. I just need to feel better. I need to move better. I need to function better." And the cool thing that happened was he ended up looking better down the road when he trained more like an athlete and for function. And we know diet is obviously a huge part of that. And his diet was always on point, impeccable. And with his nutrition and just his dedication, and I think also maybe the novelty of doing something completely different, it was kind of like a perfect storm where if you look at his last 8 to 10 WrestleManias from the beginning of his career, he wasn't maybe as big. He wasn't 260, 270, but from 225 to 245, he was still pretty damn big and muscular and lean and athletic. So he he's it's not as difficult. While yes, he would tell you, he's a meathead just like us. He is smart enough to know you need to evolve. Your body can't just handle going heavier and heavier and beating the shit out of it, for the rest of your life. He's 55 now, going on 56. So he's smart enough to understand. So it's not so much me having to convince him. Whereas my other clients, it is more of a me leading by example, them seeing how I've changed my style of training, and just knowing, and this is a whole nother topic, maybe, but as a trainer, this as a coach, your ability to communicate and speak your client's language is so important. You can't just tell them, do this because I said so. You need to be able to communicate it in a way that's relatable and understandable. And that's where you'll eventually win them over. You get that buy-in. And then when they start feeling the difference, it becomes much easier. You don't have to sell them much more when they wake up and they're not in pain, but they look just as good as they used to look, but they feel better. Then it's kind of an easy sale.
And I suspect, especially with Paul, one of the big things, if you spend less time hurt, that's more time you actually train to look good.
Yes, yes. And that was his big thing. He was, the previous years before he called me, yeah, half the time is spent in rehab, physical therapy, surgery. So even if you made the argument like the training we were doing, if you just looked at it from a pure hypertrophy aesthetic standpoint, some might say, it's not enough volume. You should have had him doing more. He could have gotten even more jacked if he did this or that. But to your point, he stayed healthy for the 14 years we've trained. He hasn't had any long layoff from surgeries from getting hurt in the gym and tearing things off the bone. So the longevity of it, the consistency of that training actually ended up producing the same or even a better result aesthetically, because it was less time in the rehab room on the operating table and more time training 4+ days a week consistently for 14 plus years. Obviously, you're going to be able to make some pretty good changes with that type of consistency.
And I know it's Ben Bruno likes to say this, and I think there's different spins on this, but Ben will often talk about, and he's a legendary coach of athletes and everyday people, how the people, the high-end athletes, they're freaks anyway, right? They're absolute freaks. So one of his biggest things is he's just trying not to get them hurt. Now, the other camp is, I don't think there's anything we could ever truly guarantee, hey, we can prevent injuries. There's a lot of factors that go into it. We can certainly manage a lot of the aspects at risk, but with someone like Paul, I mean, he's where he was at the top. Again, I'll say Triple H for the people like following along. He's at the top of the game. He's one of the most legendary and enduring figures in that sport, right? He's upper echelon Hall of Fame caliber. And that doesn't happen without a lot of gifts. So I'm guessing that maybe it was just so. Is there any more depth to some of the changes you made, some of the load management strategies, some of the exercise selection stuff that helped along the way?
Yeah, with Paul's training.
And your own, I mean, or any client. I mean, I think this stuff probably will run concurrent. And I think the underlying theme is, all right, I'll frame it. One of the biggest lenses that I train everybody through is, and each person's different, is can we put tension on muscle, but make the joints feel better in the training? And if that means, okay, we're not overhead pressing a barbell and we're using a landmine, and if we can produce essentially the same kind of tension, load, volume, etc., via a position where your elbow is tucked into your body, more of a neutral position versus more flared out. And if that's the difference that feels good versus not so good, guess what? That's a no-brainer. We don't have to force. There's no, you said earlier, there's no exercise that are mandatory.
Absolutely. Yeah. So along those lines, the big ones for me, like I mentioned, are no mandatory exercises. There's more than one way to progress that we kind of already spoke about. It could be adding more weight, doing more reps, increasing the range of motion, improving your technique, et cetera, et cetera. That was a big one. The reverse workout order was a big one. Training to failure, which is big now in the research coming out with how close we have to be to failure. For me, when I training, once I was no longer an athlete and I'm just training to kind of look and feel good, and especially me, 35-year-old plus me, I like to, on my main, more strength-based lifts, I like to leave 1 to 2 reps in reserve for the most part. Always going to be exceptions to the rules, but for the most part, I don't care what whether when the research supported it, didn't support it. I'm more conservative. Like I could count, speaking of Triple H, this is a good carryover. I've trained him for 14 plus years, and even 10 of those, he was still wrestling, getting ready for big WrestleMania matches, etc., and trained very, very hard and consistently, 4 times a week, 14 plus years. And I had to physically jump in and help him with 1 rep. Once he missed a lift in 14 plus years. Not saying he didn't train hard, but it was always that one rep in reserve, or you push yourself on the main lifts. We trained that way, and then on the accessory isolation type exercises, that's where I like the AMRAP sets, and you do your one arm cable tricep push downs to failure and your calf raises to failure, and that I've stuck with that, like I said, with Paul for 14 plus years. I think the research now supports that as well, but we were doing that when he first hired me and said, listen, I can't get injured anymore. That was something, that was a big change for him, because he had, again, that old meathead mentality of like, everything was to failure. Even the big barbell lifts, you went to failure, and then you did your forced reps with your training partner. We got rid of all that. And he got stronger, didn't get hurt, and packed on just as much muscle, if not more, than ever. Because I think his body was having an easier time recovering from the workouts. Which leads me to my next big thing is the volume that I program now is much less. In fact, I just posted a full push workout of mine yesterday, and it's funny. A lot of the comments were from people saying, "Holy shit!" Speaking about themselves, they said, "I think I might be doing way too much volume because this is way less than I do." And it was actually one of my higher volume workouts for myself. So I, push myself harder, but do less because I've learned as I've gotten older, it's not about what you can do. I'm capable of doing more. It's about what you can recover from. That's the sweet spot.
And as we get into our age and upwards, our capacity to recover goes down. The way you program sounds a lot like my friend Jason Brown stuff. And I'm guessing you probably know Jason. If
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
Jason. Yes, I know Jason. He was on my
he's
podcast not too long ago.
exactly. So there's a ton of overlap between I know the way Jason talks about training because Jason doesn't like spending a lot of time in the gym. He doesn't like feeling beaten up. He's big on full body based stuff. So it sounds like there's a lot of overlap there. I'll make an effort to get Jason on again in the not too distant future. He's a great friend. Okay, let's pivot a little bit, but I think this still lines up. You stay lean. You are one of the guys who's always been pretty lean. It's one of your priorities. That's obvious. What trade-offs do you accept to stay lean?
Well, I'm not even close to as strong. I shouldn't say not as close, but I used to be a lot stronger. Uh, but so right now I am 194 pounds. I just got weighed yesterday. And I don't obsess over my weight. My daughter was sick and we were at the doctor's office. I stepped on the scale. That's why I know my exact weight. Where I used to be 230, I range from 230 to 235. I have this classic picture of me when my kids were first born holding them that I've posted. If you scroll down my page, you'll see. I mean, my face looks like I swallowed myself. Like it's just, I mean, I didn't think I was that bloated at the time, but man, it's like a different person. But at that point, you know, I'm doing 405 for three on the bench. I was a strong dude. And now, I mean, I haven't put anywhere close to four plates on the bar, nor do I even straight bar bench anymore. So there is definitely a trade-off. The biggest trade-off is strength, but only absolute strength. And
Mm.
this is where mentally this has helped me a lot. My goals have shifted a bit. And number one for me is health and longevity. I'm a dad. I want to be around for my kids and see all the milestone things that they're going to go through as they grow up. That's my main motivator. But I still want to I don't want to look like the average dad. I need to intimidate teenage boys as they come to the house to pick up my daughters. That's a big motivator too. So we still want to be jacked, but I don't want to be this big bloated, unhealthy meathead. So as I mentioned before, I like having goals in the gym. I don't like just I love training, but I love training so much more when I'm training for something. So just even for myself, now I have like weighted push-up goals and chin-up goals and dip goals as opposed to bench pressing as much as I possibly can for one rep or trap bar deadlifting as much as I can for one rep. My relative strength goals have now taken priority, and that aligns with my kitchen goals because if you're eating too much and you're gaining bad weight, you are going to see a decrease in your performance in exercises like your max chin ups and weighted push ups and body weight type movements. So that's been very helpful for me. And another change kind of going on what we spoke about before is relative strength goals over just straight absolute strength goals.
Is there anything you'd caution people against in the quest to be ultra lean? Because we know that, well, we see the images of, bodybuilders on stage, and now obviously there's a lot of Photoshop stuff. And I have a theory too. You see, if anybody follows Generation Iron, like I've written for them before, love their media, but there's definitely a while there where every second post seemed like it was a dead bodybuilder fitness competitor. Now, theory one is there's a massive proliferation of the number of competitors and a lot more media to showcase the things that happen. So maybe we weren't hearing about it before. But in the age of social media, I think there's far more pressure for a lot of these people to stay lean year round. And we know in that world, there's a lot of use of, a variety of different drugs. I'm not interested in judgment or what have you, but especially diuretics and other things that will actually keep them lean. And my guess is that the increased usage of that stuff year round to stay lean for social media might be one of the things that's tipping over and resulting in more deaths. Thoughts?
I I don't disagree with anything you said. My thoughts would be you nailed it, and I agree with everything. It's unfortunately one of my biggest issues with the quote unquote fitness industry is it has almost nothing to do with fitness, which that's something that actually really bothers me. Um, I'm not someone I love other people's success. It motivates me. If I see you doing big things and other people doing big things, I'm motivated. I have the type of wiring that is like, oh my God, that's awesome. I have to get better. I want to do more. So I don't want this to come off as bitter, but it does bother me a bit where I I've been putting content out for freaking 25 years consistently, and I think pretty damn good. And guys like me and you, we have great followings, but we don't have 5 million followers, 30 million followers. I see some of these bodybuilders and fitness influencers, quote unquote, with millions and millions of followers, and it's because they're more jacked than us. Like, let's be honest, they're not putting out great information, but they're these freak shows. When you look at them, they're shredded and they're jacked and they're vascular, and it's appealing to people, so they get more eyeballs on them, and that kind of minimizes. It creates more noise. So guys like me and you, our message maybe doesn't reach as many people, and when I get in what I think is incredible shape, especially for a 49, 50-year-old guy, I realize compared to some juiced up, 20-year-old, I look like shit. But people are so they've their mind has been so warped of, what's jacked, what's not, what's lean, what's not. If you don't have 6 or 8 visible abs, like people will be like, oh, what does this guy know? He's not that jacked, he's not that shredded. And it's kind of a shame, because if they only knew those people that they're following that are super jacked and shredded, it's not because they're knowledgeable, it's because they're taking a massive amount of drugs. And that's the one thing in the fitness industry, and I'm not like a jealous person or a hater, but that really does bother me about our industry.
It's funny. Every once in a while I'll mention this or throw it on my social media. For quite a while, I've deliberately used profile photos that make me look smaller. So every once in a while, I'll post video of me lifting, and then people start freaking out, or they meet me in person. So I'm 6'2", and I walk around about 250 pounds. I've been as big as 260, right? Not a small human, but I actually deliberately sort of hide away from that, lean on the messaging side of social media. And I think it's actually been a great asset, because I think it's actually led to the right people self-selecting. Because listen, I've written for T Nation, your Generation Irons, and your kind of your bro side of stuff. But my following 63% women on my Instagram. I love that shit. Listen, guys, listening, you guys are great. I love you guys. I coach a lot of one-on-one guys, but I have an online women's group community. There's like 84 in this round. Women are amazing fitness consumers. And I'm not interested in being like, okay, let's show me a lot of shirtless stuff. I put up in my story to illustrate the point. I've got a photo where I actually slightly out-angled Dennis Wolf when I met him years ago. Okay, I was about 260. I look enormous. And people are just freaking out. It's like, yeah, for real. Like, I've got some photos of that stuff. but I actually try not to highlight it too much. And I mean, I'm not interested in like telling other fitness pros what to do, but I actually think that there is a pathway to having an incredible audience who really is interested in the lifestyle stuff and not the aesthetic stuff. And then every once in a while, I can drop a little bit of aesthetic, and you're like, holy shit. I literally get comments from time to time, someone just being an ass on my social media, and they'll be, oh, like, you don't even look like you lift or whatever. And I'm like laughing to myself, going, you have no idea, but I don't need to prove that to you. Fuck off.
Yeah, it's crazy. Their brains have just been warped as to what's healthy, what's not, what's jacked, what's not, what's muscular. It's a shame. It's the world we live in. But to your point too, while I don't have the biggest following in the world, man, I got a pretty damn good group of people that I feel like I've got, like, you know the names, even the ones I haven't met in person, just good humans that have consumed my content for a long time, and I am super grateful for that. But because I'm so passionate about what I do and I feel like I put out good information, I would love to reach more people. And obviously that helps. I'm not going to lie, that would help my business and financially. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat that either, but I genuinely, would love to help more people and reach more people. It just seems like, man, like, can we do it without just going the whole, and I'm not judging people, but I'm more after my health, so I'm not going to go the drug route at 50 years old just to get more jacked, for Instagram.
And I think more and more people are waking up. I think there is a self-selection process to this stuff. I think that they may be into more of the flashy influencer-based stuff, but I think that they graduate out. And I'm great with the self-selection side of stuff. So that way the right people do that were there to find us. And whether it's someone who actually is really savvy, like I just had Jordan Syed on. Jordan's got 1 million followers. Jordan's
Yeah.
messaging is great. But one thing that's a common theme, and again, I want to have you on here because I'm hoping that a lot of the audience knows you, but I'm hoping a lot of audience finds you for the first time through this. But you are, I introduced you as legendary because are a legend in this space for fitness education. You are very well respected in the fitness community. So I'm glad to have you on. Okay, any other nutrition based stuff that's a big priority for you?
my it's going to be boring for people, but what really has helped me, and it's just the truth, I don't follow any kind of special diet anymore. I will say this with regards to nutrition. I think this gets brought up a lot, and I don't know. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on this as far as tracking your calories and your macros, writing everything down. There's a school of thought where I know people that say you have to do that. You can't reach your goals unless you need to know exactly how many calories you're eating, how many grams of protein, etc. And there's the other school of thought that says that, creates eating disorders and it's just a little bit too much, etc., etc. I feel, and what helped me as someone who was always into the training, and I was knowledgeable about nutrition, but I joke and say I'm an Italian Gavone from New Jersey. I ate too much. I love to eat. So I was the 235-pound dude with like 18 to 20% body fat most of my career. Now I'm closer to that 10% range. I've gotten lower in the single digits, not year round though. Like, speaking of the influencer types, I'm not going to starve myself, but what helped me initially go from the 235-pound bloated meathead dude to the 195-pound lean dude, I tracked everything meticulously I did it for 3 months, but I think just minimally. If my advice to everyone listening would be, if you've never done it, yes, it might seem like a lot, but do it for 1 month, just so you have a better understanding of how many calories are in certain foods. Using a food scale, it really doesn't take a lot. Now I use food scales every day, and I don't consider myself crazy or anal with my nutrition. If you're going to take out a plate to put your food on, I take out the scale with the plate. I put the food on until I get the portion that I want. I throw the scale back in the drawer, and it's really not a big deal thing. but I would say track for at least a month so you understand calories, portion size, etc. Then you don't need it anymore. And now I'm at the point where I eat until I'm satisfied, not full, not starving. That I know that's not the most scientific thing, but I literally that's what I do. I eat until I'm satisfied. I don't not I'm full and I got to unbuckle my pants and I'm about to take a nap, but I'm not going to leave the table starving either. I eat until satisfied. I always prioritize protein. Protein's the star of the show. If I look at my meal, my plate, it's always protein and then some carbs and some fat. And for me, it's 3 to 4 times a day. I divide my protein. I weigh 195 pounds. My minimal is 175 grams of protein. That's my minimal grams for the day. Or I like to aim for a gram per pound. So I shoot more for 195 to 200, but I make sure I get 175 divided over 3 or 4 meals. I drink 20 ounces of water first thing in the morning, every morning. That's something that has been big for me. I drink 20 ounces of water with a little pinch of salt in there, and then I go for a walk. I answer emails. I get some emails and texts out of the way while I do a fasted morning walk. I make sure to get 3 servings of fruit in a day. As someone that was a big overeater, especially of carbs at night, if I have a piece of fruit with my 3 meals, that works wonders for me. At the end of the day, I don't have as much cravings for the sweets and the junk at night. So that has worked well for me. And I drink half my body weight in ounces of water each day. In between meals, I'm just always kind of sipping on water, which keeps me, as someone who has a big appetite and has a tendency to be hungry a lot, that just kind of helps curb my appetite, stay hydrated, because a lot of people overeat when they're starting to get a little dehydrated, especially in the summer. You mistake being hungry, mistake being dehydrated for being hungry. So those are kind of my big rocks, my simple things that I follow each day that help kind of keep me lean and without feeling like I'm on a diet or starving myself.
If everybody practiced literally everything you just said, we would have a very healthy society. It would be a major shift. A few thoughts. So, one, I had a recent episode with my friend Mike Dola, who's a founder of Stronger You, very successful nutrition coach. He's a very big proponent that people should at least experience tracking. So, second thought, I have a hard time with, there's a corner of our industry, and anybody who really knows me knows that these type of people piss me off, who we know that eating disorders are a real thing and we know that they are dangerous, but fear mongering over them and creating fear around a useful tactic like tracking to equate that with high risk of eating disorders, I think is intellectually dishonest, and I think it's actually quite harmful. So we don't want, and I think it can actually perpetuate a valid reason in the minds of the people who are already fearful of it from not doing something that actually might give them some empirical data about the state of their nutrition. And those people are already vulnerable because they're probably over consuming on calories, they're probably metabolically unhealthy, they're probably obese, and some objective data might actually be really valuable to them. Yes, I think there's going to be a subsection of people, especially anyone who's prone to OCD, where that may not be the answer. But I think for the majority of people, even experiencing a little bit gets you to understand the amount of food you're eating and the caloric value and where you need to be. And from that point, I think that the ideal situation is to be able to auto-regulate your food, which is pretty much what you described, is you get a sense of where you need to be and you learn to auto-regulate it ongoing. That is the way I prefer to do it. Mike and I recently, we talked about intuitive eating. The danger with intuitive eating, I mean, as an ideal state for someone who's knowledgeable, experienced, intuitive eating is great. But it's kind of like I said this last time, it's like enlightenment in certain religions. It's not probably the first or second step, because
Yeah.
I love joking. Eating intuitively in tune with your body signals, which is not what the intuitive eaters actually truly mean, is what got most people into the state they're in. And the US, what, 85%-ish metabolically unhealthy? Scary statistic, right? So intuitive eating at the start is not the answer. You need some structure. You need to learn about what is the food value, the calorie value of the food you're actually eating, I think is a good place for people to start.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. The tracking thing, it's just funny because when people start doing it for the first time, they're generally shocked at how much more they were eating than they thought. Like when you first realize what a serving of peanut butter actually really, it's like, oh, it's not the whole jar. Like, no, a tablespoon, and it's not a heaping tablespoon. You need to experience those things, and then you just look at it differently for the rest of your life.
I don't get, you know what? I've eaten plenty of peanut butter in my life, crunchy over smooth, but I don't get the obsession with it either. Like you hear about these fitness professionals or fitness competitors who are like standing in front of the fridge in the middle of the night, fucking eating spoonfuls of peanut butter. It's like, I guess maybe it's a symbol of they're restricted and then they're rebelling against it. Like, but that tells me there is something genuinely unhealthy going on psychologically.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, guess what? If I had to pick like the top 50 things I could eat, now then again, I guess Reese peanut butter cups, which have peanut butter in them, I like that. Like those are great. But would just straight peanut butter make my top 50? I don't think so. So, but again, I'm weird. I recently said in another episode, I don't like poutine. I'm Canadian. I think that stuff's disgusting. I just don't get the obsession over it.
Yeah, so that's like what we call disco fries. Is that the cheese fries? Basically
Cheese
cheese
and
on French fries?
gravy, and yeah, I was
Yeah,
shitting on
yeah.
it recently on another episode, but I mean, to me, it's just like ew. No, nothing appealing about it. So I I have the advantage of like I didn't like pizza growing up. I think like mom, I love you. You're listening. My mother listens to all these, but like the Kraft boxed pizza growing up as a kid was not the same thing as like really good pizza. So I didn't eat pizza until I was probably about 19 years old. So maybe that was a wonderful thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that might have helped you in the long run because I can't say I don't like pizza. That's one
I
of
love
my
I love pizza
downfalls.
now, but I pick my
Yeah.
spots. There's a lot of food that I eat. Here's another thing. Is just because you love something doesn't mean that you need it or you're entitled to it on an ongoing basis. I think, and I like this analogy. I always point out like Sex in the City, the show. Like I grew up and I saw plenty of it, right? You listen, you got girlfriends, you're probably watching Sex in the City with them. And but I do think I want to be careful. It's a little stereotypical, so I don't want to insult, women on this one, but I have worked with some women who they see these false portrayals of people's reality on shows and movies. And I think the Sex and the City women are a great illustration of this because it's like, what, a couple glasses of wine for lunch, there's a lot of
Yep.
booze, martinis, whatever. They're sitting around, they're eating. And yeah, they walk around New York a fair bit, but I think some people think, well, I should be entitled to be able to eat and drink all this and yet still stay lean. And that's not realistic, especially as you get older, especially women who are getting into menopausal age.
Mm.
And something really important that I do like to point out, the world and serving sizes, generally speaking, is making American men, North American men, metabolically unhealthy. Women are on average smaller with less muscle mass and lower metabolisms. And if they're conditioned to consume the same amount of alcohol and the same food portions, especially eating out or alongside of a male partner, then what's that going to do? That's actually going to accelerate the rate at which they gain body fat because they're over and above their caloric base metabolic rate. So just being alert to that, maybe we got to realize that we're not entitled to have all the things that we think we should because again, you're getting marketing messages and you're getting these false portrayals. Like another aspect of the false portrayal of Sex in the City and Friends is the apartments that they live in, right? People like what they do for a living and where they live in New York and the cost of that. Yeah, sure, scale it back 20, 25 years, but even still, it's literally outrageous. It's pure fiction. So their lifestyle has a lot of fiction as well. So we can't let cultural influences and media imagery influence what we think we should be able to live like.
I I couldn't agree more. Ditto on that one. I agree with everything you said. Truer words have not been spoken.
This has been a genuine treat. Obviously, I will in the grand scheme of things, I'm going to have you back at some point. I've enjoyed this. I hope these lessons are really valuable and practical to the listeners. People can follow you at DeFranco's Gym. That's your Instagram. What other resources? Because I know you have a legacy of stuff. What other resources would you share with people? Want to point them to?
that's where I put most of my free content. That's where I'm most active at DeFranco's Gym on Instagram. If you are a personal trainer, we do have a personal trainer certification. I'm partners with Jim Smith, Smitty Diesel, that
Ah,
many know him as Smitty Diesel. We've been partners on the certification. Our CPPS, it stands for Certified Physical Preparation Specialist. Uh, been around now for 15 years. That is at cppscoaches.com. There are online courses. We have a level 1, a level 2, and a football specific course. If you work with football players, it's like PhD level course in football prep. It's one I'm very proud of. Like my life's work in that one, which is pretty cool. And then for gym owners now, I just partnered with Chris Tutela, and we have our Iron Business Blueprint, which is a 90-day coaching program where it's what I wish I had when I first opened my gym. Because I think, and I'm sure you've seen this, Andrew. So many of us get into this business because we're meatheads. We love training, we love helping people, and then we're good at it. So we make it a career. But then next thing you know, it turns into a business. And if you're like me, you have zero business background, zero business knowledge, finance, marketing, sales. I'm a dummy with all that stuff. And yet you need to learn how to do it. So we packaged, the lessons and everything we learned in our 35 plus combined years of being gym owners. And we teach you step by step how to run a successful, highly profitable, sustainable gym business. So you don't have a good month and then 3 shitty months. It's really a phenomenal course. We're just going into our 4th cohort. The results we've been getting have been incredible. People doubling, tripling their recurring monthly revenue is kind of the standard. So very proud of that. That's ironbusinessblueprint.com. The cool thing is you could just apply and we call you, Chris or I will call you back, and we do a 15-minute audit of your business. We just learn a little bit more about your business, kind of where you're at. And then together we could decide if the program's right for you, because we don't want to take anyone's money unless we are 100% sure you are going to make that investment back 1,000-fold over the course of the years. If it's not a good fit and we've turned people away, you're not ready yet, or you're doing good enough, we will be upfront with you and let you know. Otherwise, if we could help you out, we get you into the next cohort.
so Chris Tutela is a friend. I actually met him at Lucas 2021 Vigor Ground Fitness
Oh,
Summit,
okay.
and he was there. So him and his, I'm pretty sure it's Gabriella.
Yes. Yep.
Yep. So they were there, and so they're lovely. And I've
The
seen Chris
best.
actually tagged into a lot of your media, so I knew you guys were doing something together. And second thing I'll say is, so I actually have a Bachelor of Commerce degree with a concentration in finance and marketing. And
Wow.
the
You're a
formal,
unicorn in our industry.
it has some value for sure, but I still don't think it prepared me for the reality of the business of this career. And I think it would be wise for someone to actually go and do the tactical, very like geared towards it. So,
I
guys,
appreciate you. I appreciate you saying that. Nothing beats real world experience, right?
nothing beats it. No, exactly. And I mean, I probably learned more from running a bar years in a past life than I did from the school. But and again, I brought you on because I endorse you, your legacy. You have incredible reputation for integrity. So for the coach side of stuff, guys, go dive into that. At the very least, everybody go follow Joe. Social media is great. Wrestling fans, obviously, you probably see traces of Triple H in there. And for everybody listening, maybe you found this episode through Joe's Media. I've had a lot of really great guests. I had Luca Hocevar on not terribly long ago. I've had Jordan Syatt. I'm going to bring a lot more really incredible people on. I want your feedback. Post it up, tag me in your Instagram stories. I will respond. And Joe, thanks for taking the time, man. It's been great.
Thanks for having me. This has been awesome.